Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakadas. I want to give double honor to the apostles and elders of the great millstone who rule well and teaching us the truth, 100% securely. And I'd like to give a salutation to the Akim and Aqua who are listening and studying to show ourselves approved. Alright, so this is another quick lesson. And it's centered around, conversations that me and the Akim had over the things that were going on in this past weekend, and the things that we experienced, dealing with 2/3 and pretty much the 2/3 members of our family, of our actual family. And it actually gave me an idea for a subject, okay, because it's more than likely a testimonial lesson. And the title of this lesson is "What is going to be your bitter pill?" Hashtag Jacob's Trouble. And what I mean by that is that we all have, loved ones, all right, that we hold dear. We actually hold dear close to us, right? We love them and we want them to get better. We want them to follow the ways of Yahweh Shah, but they are of a 2/3 mindset, so they're going to more than likely going to be destroyed. And so when I think about that and I ponder on that, it's like, what is going to be your bitter pill? Okay. And going into the bitter pill, the definition of it, all right, as it says, a bitter pill to swallow, which basically goes, it says a bitter pill to swallow is something unpleasant that is difficult to accept, such as a disappointment or setback that must be accepted and endured. Okay, which is pretty much similar to the fiery trial that we must go through during Jacob's trouble. And during those fiery trials, a lot of people bitter pill is gonna be by way of your family members getting knocked off by Esau Edom. Okay, cause just we gotta face that reality. All right, that Yahweh Shah about to bring terror on the whole world. Okay, and he about to cleanse out the wicked, right? Because he's getting ready to come back and cleanse the whole earth. As the scripture says in the prayer, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So everybody that's deemed unworthy, right, we're going to be purged out. The Lord Yahweh shall have a judgment waiting for them. Okay, so that's pretty much your bitter pill. Okay, that's more than likely they're going to be a part of that judgment from Yahweh Shah. All right, so once you recognize that bitter pill, you got to, meditate on it and understand, like, okay, am I going to let this, whatever happened to my loved one, am I going to let that persuade me away from Yahweh Shah? Okay, and I can honestly tell you, through my personal experience, the mother of my children, all right, she more than likely gonna cause my bitter pill is because, again, my children, all right, I'm not so much worried about things that might happen to her, but I'm worried about the more of her behavior that's gonna have my children in the crossfire of her, all right, and I think that's going to be my bitter pill, all right, and I also think that something is going to happen to my parents because that's going to be that bitter pill, right? Couple of my brothers and sisters and nephews, right? So since I'm already an accepting of that, all right, just like the prophet Job, okay, matter of fact, real quick, let me I'm already in Google. I wanted to show you this movie that I recommend y'all to watch, y'all. This is I think it's called To Hell and Back. There's a movie. Yeah, this movie right here. You can watch this on Temu. It's called To Hell and Back. And if you actually watch this movie, it's centered around what happened to the prophet Job, okay? And Ernie Hudson, okay, was pretty much playing Job. All right, you actually definitely go watch this movie, and it pretty much give you an idea of what I'm talking about. That bitter pill, okay. If you actually go watch that movie, you see, just like what happened in the scriptures, Job lost, his children and so on and so forth. And of course, when you watch the movie, you got to pick the meat out of the bone. But it gives you that idea of that fiery trial that we must go through, in that bitter pill. All right. And so I said quite a bit. Let's get, because I got some precepts lined up, but let's get two scriptures before I get to the precept that I already have in my note. Okay, so this is Zechariah chapter 13, and in verse 8. Okay, because we were just talking about this in the highways and hedges earlier today. All right, earlier this morning. And it says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, said the Lord, Yahweh Yahushua, two parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. Okay, the two part therein shall be cut off and die. That is more than likely going to be our bitter pill that we have to accept and then we have to endure through those fiery trials. But once we experience those, that bitter pill, we can't let that persuade us from, the ways of Yahweh Yahushua. As a matter of fact, when it do happen, we have to cleave on to Yahweh Yahushua even more, just like the prophet Job did. Okay? And again, I highly recommend you definitely go watch it. You can watch that, you can actually look it up on Tubi, and you'll be able to watch that movie, To Hell and Back. Okay? Definitely go watch it. All right? Now in verse 9, and it says, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and I will refine them as silver is refined, and I will try them as gold is tried, and they shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord, Yahweh Yahushua is my power. Okay? So these are the 1/3, even after the fact, even after they've dealt with that bitter pill, even after they lost their loved one, more than likely were 2/3 anyway, they still cleave on to Yahweh Yahushua. That's the mindset you need to be in. You need to be in that mindset that's going to detach from America, aka Babylon the Great. When I say detached, that means the relationship that you had in America, aka Babylon the Great. The cars, the material, all of those things you have to detach and attach yourself to Yahweh Yahushua. Okay, we'll go from there and get my most favorite precept, which is Ecclesiastica, aka Sirach, chapter 2 and verse 5. Okay, because it said, for gold is tried in the fire, an acceptable man in a furnace of adversity. Okay, and that's that fire that the 1/3 is going to be going through, because the Lord said he's going to try them as silver is tried, and he's going to refine them as gold is tried. We refine them as gold and silver, loosely paraphrasing. That gold, that fire is symbolically represent the fiery trial. Okay, the furnace of adversity. All right. And that furnace of adversity represent that bitter pill, okay? Going back into that picture that we just got you showing in the beginning of this lesson. All right, which I'll pretty much put that picture in the thumbnail of this lesson when we get done. All right. But that's pretty much the point, is that fiery trial, we're all gonna be tried. Okay? And so once you experience that bitter pill, you got to ask yourself, are you going to allow that whatever situation is going to happen in your daily walk, are you going to allow that to persuade you away from your Yahweh Yahushua, or are you going to cleave on to him? Okay? And that's pretty much the whole testament. That's that whole, mindset that you got to have. You're going to cleave on to Yahweh Yahushua even more, okay? Because through Yahweh Yahushua, all things is possible. He's going to not only deliver you out of those, situations, those setbacks, okay, but he's also, once you endure that fiery trial, that furnace of adversity, he's going to give you even more better life than what you had from the time before, okay? So we go from there and we get 1 Corinthians. The very first precept I had in my note was 1 Corinthians chapter 7. In verse 29, all right? And we'll read on down to 31. Because it said, but this I say, brethren, the time is short, okay? Meaning that we don't have much time right here in America, aka Babylon the Great. So therefore the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, okay? And Apostle Paul was basically saying right in the front, at the beginning of the verse, he said the time is short. basically giving you a sense of urgency, right? And it says, and it remained that both that they had wives be as though they had none. All right, he's not telling you if you do have a wife, he's not telling you to disregard her right then and there, but he's giving you that sense of urgency. You know, not I mean, you can still be able to take care of your wife, but you still want to be able to put Yahweh Shah above everything else. Okay, that's what he's saying. That sense of urgency to get right with Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah, which the Heavenly Father's name is Yahweh, and his only begotten Son name is Yahweh Shah. Okay, that's that sense of urgency. Your time is short to get right with him, all right, because when he come back, it's gonna be too late. Okay, so whatever relationship you have right here in America, aka Babylon the Great, put that on the back burner and put Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah first. This was the Apostle Paul was saying in verse 1 Corinthians 7 and 29. All right, in verse 30. And he says, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passes away. Okay? And that goes back into that bitter pill to swallow. Okay? You got a lot of our people that don't want this world to pass away. They want to continue, they want this world to continue. This is a wicked world. This is a wicked society. And all it does is bring death and destruction. Okay? And the 2/3 of our family members, they can't understand that. They can't see that. Okay? They can't see that this world is going to pass away, and righteousness, the world that's going to come, is going to be full of righteousness. It's going to be full of blessing. All right? Everything is going to grow. It's going to be abundant. Versus this world now, everything is deteriorating. Okay? The earth is mourning because of who's in control. It's none other than Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. Okay? So this world has to pass away in order to bring about a righteous kingdom. All right? Again, Romans chapter 13 and verse 11. Okay? In Romans 13 and 11, it says, and that knowing the time that is now, it is high time to wake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believe. Okay? And that's how you know. Cause really, I should have. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read this again. I'm gonna read verse 10. Okay, because it says, "Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law." Okay, and that's what we were doing a righteous act, and we're trying to keep the laws of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh to the best of our ability. We're not going to keep it perfect, okay? But the laws that's within our control, the laws we can control, we keep them, okay? The laws we can't control, we're covered by Yahweh Shah grace, okay? That Yahweh Shah is whom the world in you call Jesus Christ, okay? We're covered through his sacrifice, through his grace. We're covered, the laws that we can't keep, the laws that's not in our control, we're covered by his sacrifice through his grace, okay? Now, verse 11 again from the top, and it says, and that knowing the time that is now, it is high time to wake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believe. You see that? And so that's just more proof that further to show that our time is very short to, and we don't have much time to detach from this wicked society. Okay? And that's also a bitter pill for most people. You got a lot of people that, they work very hard to obtain some of those material riches, they're going back into their first precept, 1 Corinthians the 7th chapter, where he said, as they buy as though they possess it not. Okay? So you got to get rid of all those things that you you got to be able to let that go. All the things that you work hard for, the house, the cars, okay? Some people got boats, all those things, you got to be willing to let that go. Okay? That's that might be a bitter pill for some people. Okay? As for me, the bitter pill is the relationship that I have in this world. Okay? But as right now, as I speak, the relationship I have with Yahweh Bashim Yahushua is much more better than any relationship that I have in this world. So I'm accepting, and I'm going to deal with the fact that I'm going to lose the relationship on this side. Okay? But again, through the Spirit, that will be my bitter pill. That will, just me speculating, that I think that's what I will have to more than likely have to go through down Jacob's trouble, is losing the relationship that I have, okay? And that will pretty much be a testament, a test to me, or that fiery trial that I will have to go through, losing my children, or something like that, losing my parents or something like that, okay? That's something that I think about, like what would I be going through whenever I'm going through Jacob's trouble, okay? And that's why I wanted to put this lesson out, and get Yasharala to be prepared and ready for Jacob's trouble, because it's right around the corner. That's why I said my salvation is nearer than what we believe. Okay, meaning that you're going to go through a fiery trial before we reach that child salvation. Matter of fact, when you read Acts the 14th chapter, let's go get that real quick. Acts chapter 14 and verse 22. And that reads, and it said, confirming the soul of the disciple and exhorting them to continue in the faith, that we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Okay? And that's another thing. You can't believe these plantation Christian pastors when they say that you're going to be wrapped up. You're not going to go through any fiery trial, all right, before you reach the kingdom of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. That's a bald-faced lie, okay? Because the scriptures also said the servant is not greater than his master, okay? Yahweh Shah, who in the world Indian called Jesus Christ, went through a fiery trial before he became the right hand of Yahweh, okay? So here it is, you got Christians that'll tell you that you're not going to go through no fiery trial. You're going to be wrapped up when all hell breaks loose. So in action, they're trying to say that you're better than the master. No. The servant is going to go through exactly what the master went through, which is our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shah. Okay? He went through a fiery trial. We got to go through a fiery trial. There ain't no way out of it. All right? So we go from there. You get 2nd Ezra chapter 14 and verse 14 through 15. 2nd Ezra chapter 14, verse 14. Okay? Because it says, let go from the mortal thoughts, okay? It said, let go from the mortal thought, cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature, okay? So the mortal thought is the things that you're dealing with on this side, man, okay? Those are the mortal thoughts. And the Lord is telling you, let go of those mortal thoughts, okay? That bitter pill that you think you might experience, that you think you feel like you can't let go, that the Lord is telling you right here in 2nd Ezra 14 and 14, let go from the immortal thoughts, cast away the burdens of men, put off now the weak nature, and set aside the thought that are most heavy unto thee, and haste thee to flee from these times. Okay? And in verse 16 it says, for yet greater evil than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. Okay? I'm going to read that again, verse 16. For yet greater evil than those verse 16 again from the top. For yet greater evil than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. Okay, which is speaking of Jacob's trouble. And in verse 17, for look, how much the world shall be weaker through aid, so much the more shall evil increase upon them that dwell therein. You see that? So that's why the Lord said, let go of these mortal thoughts. Okay? You got to cleave on to him. And we're pretty much going back to the point in verse 14 and 15. You got to cleave on to him. All right? And let Yahweh Bashim Yahushua deal with this. Let him guide you out of the situation that you might be in, the setback that you're going to experience. Okay? Cleave on to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. All right, that pretty much be the point. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 38. Okay, because remember the precept said to let go of the mortal thoughts. Okay, Matthew 24 and verse 38. Because you got a lot of people, a lot of the 2/3 is going to be thinking just like the days of Noah. All right, Matthew 24 and 38. It said, for as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. You see that? And so that's why these mortal thoughts you got to put away. All right, you got to cleave onto Yahweh Shai. You got to pray to Yahweh Shai. All right, you want to pray for that mark of exemption from judgment. That's what you want. That's the why. Okay, so get rid of all of those thoughts, man. That bitter pill that you gonna go through, you when that do happen, cleave onto Yahweh Shai even more. All right. Let's get two more precepts and we're gonna close it out. It's Luke 14 and 26. All right, Luke chapter 14, verse 26, and it says, if any man come to me and hate not his father and his mother and wife and children and brethren and sister, yeah, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Okay, and this is red letter, which is pretty much going into putting off the mortal thoughts, the relationship that you have with your loved ones, which more than likely will be the 2/3 that's going to be cut off and die. Okay. All right. So when Yahweh shall give you this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, it's up to you, right? You go into that parable, it's up to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it is not given, right? So all of these things, it's going to be a bitter pill. It's going to be a test to your faith. All right, your faith is going to be tried. Okay, that's that bitter pill that you must go through. So this is what Yahweh Shah said. All right. So you want to put Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah first. Okay. All right. And this is in no way, this lesson is no way saying that you're not supposed to take care of your children if you have any, not do your husband and wifey duties and so on and so forth. But before all of that, you want to keep your Bahashim Yahweh Shah first. You want to remain in, you always want to have them in your thought first and foremost. Okay. While you're still taking care of your worldly duties and stuff like that, because we know that the world's going to pass away. So eventually, all of the stuff that you're doing is going to be temporary. Basically, that's how you think. You got to think like this. This is temporary, all right? I'm doing this, but I'm cleaving onto Yahweh Yahweh Shah, man. Okay? All right, last and not least, let's get 2 Timothy chapter 2, and the point will be in verse 3 and 4. Selector, hold on. I think it's 1 Timothy. Yeah, it's 2 Timothy 2 and 3. Okay. Yeah, 2 and 3, and it said, for man shall be, I said 3. Hold on. Yeah, Selector, bear with me. I'm in chapter 3. Okay, Selector. There it is. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 3. All right, and it says, thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahweh Yahweh Shah. So when you go through that bitter pill, you got to endure it, okay? And you got to endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahweh Yahweh Shah. All right, in verse 4, and it said, no man that wars entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who has chosen him to be a soldier of Yahweh Yahweh Shah, man. Okay, let's cause it's worded different. It says should Jeremiah. This Bible app is a little messed up a little bit. Let me pull this up in a different book real quick. Second Timothy chapter 2, and we just got to read in 4. All right, so we read verse 4 again from the top, and it says, no man that wars entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who have chosen him to be a soldier. All right, you being a soldier of Yahweh Yahweh Shah. Okay, in verse 5. And it says, and if a man also strive for mastery, yet he is not crowned, except he strive lawfully. Okay? And that's pretty much cleaving on to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Okay? Let's see, that was weird right here. You know, that's it shows something different right here. It says should Jeremiah in this Bible app. But you know, that's stating right there. Okay. But yeah, you know, that's pretty much the point right there. Matter of fact, we read it in the NLT, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and 4, and in the NLT, and it says, soldiers don't get tied up in affairs of a civilian life, for then they cannot please the officer who enlisted them. All right, and in that case, the officer will be Yahweh Shah, who in the world called Jesus Christ. Okay, and so that's pretty much what we have to go through, and we have to be able to endure it and cleave on to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. So that's pretty much the point of this lesson. Lord willing, this is edifying. And with that, let me give all praise and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Wakakadas. I want to give double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who were well and teaching us the truth. And Shalom, Shalom, Kwam Yasharala, Shalom.